Today, let's talk about menus. Every site needs one, that's for sure. As previously shown in other videos, in Site Designer, you can build just a basic menu using button elements that stack on mobile devices. But if you have a lot of links, then you're going to need a more elegant solution, and that's where a nested menu is going to be the better option for you. And I'm going to show you how to do that today with the foundation framework. Okay, so let's get started. As always with the foundation framework, make sure that the slider is to the left of the smallest breakpoint before you get started. Now, the first thing we'll do is go to the content pane, and from there add a container to the canvas. For semantic purposes, let's choose the container nav. Under the styles pane, we're going to give that container the class name nav region. This container is going to hold all of our content for our navigation and nested links. So from the content pane, a second container, this time just a container div, drag and drop that into the first. And this class name that we're going to assign will be Navbar. This specific container is going to hold the title for the website and an icon for the menu trigger. So on the content pane, add in a text link element and also a font icon link. By default, they're going to show stacked on the canvas when you first add them. Now, on the styles pane, just good habit, go ahead and give it a class name. I'm going to give that font icon link just a class icon. And under the element pane is where you can control how you want the icon to look. There's a lot of different options for menus. Any of them will work. I like this one, so I'm going to choose it. And using the little element tree, I'm going to select the text link, give that a title for my class name, and then at this point, then you can just style it. I'm going to activate the inline text editor and change the text to my site, and then apply any kind of styles. I'm just going to make the font size 20 pixels just so it's nice and large. If you want, you can change the alignment, the color, all that stuff. To center it in the section under the layout pane, scroll down to the grid and flexbox layout and change that align self to center. Last thing we're going to do for this step, I'm going to go back and select that Navbar container. You can either do it right on the canvas, or that element tree makes it really handy to select it. And under the styles pane layout, choose flex. And under justify, for the content, choose space between. And this will move the two elements to opposite sides. I'm going to pause just a moment and zoom in on the element tree so that you can see exactly how we have the start organized. Again, we've got the main container, which is the nav region, and inside of that is the container Navbar, which then holds the two children, the text link and font icon. Okay, next we're ready to start adding our links. In this step, the next thing we're going to do is add yet another container element. to the nav region element, to that main parent. So with that container selected, we're going to go to the content pane and click to add a new container. And from the styles pane, give this one a class name, Sub Nav Section. And we'll also need to give it an ID selector. I'm going to name it Sub Nav. We'll use that ID later, so it's important to remember. Now on the element pane, we can see that the container did not go into the nav region because it's not nested. So if I click and drag it, we can move it right in there to its right position because we need it to be within that parent container. All right, on the content pane, next we're going to add a list container element into that Sub Nav section. Here you'll see it'll by default 3 list options. You can always add more based on how many you're going to need in your list on the element pane. So I'm adjusting that to 4. And then I'm going to add a text link element into each one of those list item containers. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is going to be our menu items. So double click on the canvas to launch that text editor and to add in your own text here. You can either double click, you can also use that little A icon that pops up on hover. And then there's also a trigger button on the styles pane as well. Okay, so I've got my 4 navigation buttons. These are going to be my 4 main links. As with any links, if you to actually apply the URL where it's going to go, that is done on the element pane under the href section. So for example, I want my home to go to index page, so in the href it would be index.html. Now, with that done, we're going to select the list container and give that a class name, vertical, medium, dash, horizontal, and finally menu. It's going to get all 3 of those classes. You'll notice that those dots in the list on the canvas are now disappeared. And when you move your slider, the links will move horizontal when the canvas gets larger. Now we're ready to add some attributes. Attributes are special script that the frameworks come up with to allow fun interactive features such as the navigation menu. And when you want to add one to a specific element, that would be done on the element pane. So in this case, with our list container still selected, we're going to scroll to the attribute section, and it's going to get the attribute data responsive menu. The value is going to be accordion, and a second value, medium drop down. We'll also need to add some attributes to the Navbar itself. So in the element tree, if we select that Navbar and scroll down to the attribute section, this time we're going to give it the attribute data responsive toggle, and the value is going to be that ID that we assigned earlier, which is Sub Nav. Little handy tip, you can see in yellow in the tree ID names that you have applied to specific elements. So if you ever forget what you've named it. Lastly, we're going to want to apply some attributes to the menu icon as well. You can either click it on the canvas or from the tree. I find it's just easier to select items from the tree. So this time it's going to get the attribute data toggle. And that value, again, we're going to use the Sub Nav ID name. All right, let's take a quick preview to see what this is going to look like in the browser. And if I grab my side and squeeze, so we see it started horizontal and then boom, it now becomes vertical with that menu triggering whenever I click that button. All right, I like how it's working so far. Even if you didn't need a nested menu, this alone is pretty cool and pretty popular in websites. And in my opinion, I just like using the hamburger menu because it saves space when you're viewing a website on a mobile device. But that's not the topic we're talking about today. We're going to nest the menu. So let's move on to the next step. So we've got our 4 options: the home, about, services, contact. In my example, I'm going to make it so the services button has additional menu options. So to do that, we're going to select the parent for that text element, which would be the list item container for that text link. And from the content pane, select a list item container, and we're going to drag and drop it right into that list item container. Basically, we're repeating the steps that we just did previously. See, you'll see a new set of list item containers appear, but now they're nested within that list item container. You can see that in the tree itself. Repeating the previous steps, gonna drag and drop 3 text links, 1 into each one of those list item containers. And while I'm here, gonna change the names of these links to their respective pages. So I'm going to make this one dental care. And I'm going to do one for braces and emergency. The new list container element we just added is going to get 2 classes, vertical and the second class menu. And you'll notice again, it now becomes in line with the rest of the buttons along on the side. So if we take a quick moment, let's preview just to see how that nested section is going to look. And you see they're horizontal, and this pops out right underneath with our 3 extra options. And in mobile view, we can trigger it and they'll all appear. Pretty cool. But now I'm going to blow your mind. We're going to do another level of nested menus. This time under dental care, I'm going to add more links. But this time under the content pane, we're going to use a unordered list link element. You can use that little drop down caret to select the UL link. And it's going to go right into the dental care list item container. I'm going to change the amount. I only need 3. I don't need 4 like the default. And double click on the canvas to add my own text. I'm going to add cleaning and cavities, which nobody wants. No one wants cavities. And flossing. 3 important things in the dental care. Finally, each element in the UL link is going to get the same two class names. So under the styles pane, we're going to assign vertical and menu classes. We'll also assign it to the parent as well for the UL link element. All right, and let's go ahead and do another test. And here we go. We can see the extra level, boom, of options. That's a lot of links you can have in that menu. Finally, I know what you're saying, but wait a minute, the title disappears. What do I do? Well, I'll show you exactly what we got to do. In this case, we're going to want to add a third container to that nav region container. If I collapse it, you'll be able to see right here on the tree. And this time, the new container we will set to show and hide depending on what size screen is viewing it. So in the content pane, I'm going to add a container. And darn it, we see that it did not go into that nav region. So clicking and dragging, we can move it right into that nav region container. Double click it to go to the styles pane, and I'm going to give it a class name, desktop title. This way we can identify that this specific element will show and hide based on the screen. Now I'm going to use a heading 1 here to replicate my site title. I'm going to just change it to my site really quick. And instead of being small, I'm just going to go ahead and make it larger. So give it a class name of desktop title so I can apply specific styles to this heading. Since it's only going to appear on larger screens, I'm going to go ahead and make it much larger, just 40 pixels. And use my trusty color picker to get that same blue style. Now, to make it so that this item is hidden for mobile screens, we'll make sure that that slider is to the left of the first breakpoint. And we're going to select the desktop title container. And under Layout, More, use the drop down to change it to None. This will make it hide for small screens. If we grab the slider and move it to the right of the first breakpoint for tablet and desktop users, we're going to change that from None to Inline. The last thing I'm going to want to do here is apply a little bit of some styling based on space. Using the element tree, I'm going to grab the main parent, that nav region container, and on the styles pane, I'm going to set a max width, probably about 1,000 pixels wide, just because I don't necessarily need my menu and all that stuff to be, extremely huge on the page. And to center it, I'm going to do a left-right auto for the margin. And back to my element tree, I'm going to grab that third container, which contained all of our sub links, and I'm going to choose Layout, Flex, and Center. This way on the wider screens, all of those links are in the center of the page instead of shifted down to the side like our previous previews in the browser. Yes, it does look a little funky on the canvas, especially when it's on the tablet view, but don't worry, those are actually hidden items, so you can just kind of disregard what it looks like right at this time. If we take a look in our browser, we can see what the actual finished result's going to be. See, everything is now nice and centered on the page. Those submenus come out, and when we go down to our mobile menu, that top header just disappears. Fantastic! Now you're ready to build some great menus. If you need to see any of the written instructions or want to see screenshots, check out the Site Designer Help Manual where we've got it all broken down. And also, one more last fun tip is if you save this to your component library, you can reuse the menu in all of your projects so you don't always have to rebuild from scratch. Thanks for joining me.